Welcome to our daily Forex market analysis, and this is for trading on May the 22nd, 2020. Just a quick disclaimer here before we get started. This is for educational purposes only. Trading is a risky business, so please be careful with your money. All right, as usual, we'll start off by taking a look at our economic calendar here. In terms of the data, we did have pretty much all the PMI numbers here came in positive, and of course the stock markets like that. Now, before we go on, we do have a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, we have US and China relationship seems to be deteriorating. So we have seen many tweets from President Trump in this regard, and also Senate passed a bill in terms of where certain Chinese companies like Alibaba can be delisted because of certain requirements from the stock exchanges. Now the bill hasn't passed the House of Commons yet. However, the first step is already taken, and that's a threat. And then we have seen that the US has been blocking Huawei from attaining some of the US technology like the chips and so forth. So overall, the stuff is escalating, at least from the US perspective. Now, Chinese Parliament is back, or Congress is back in session today, and a couple of things that we'll have to watch out for there. One will be the growth forecast for Chinese economy. If the growth forecasts are reasonable. For example, last year it was the growth came in just over 6%, and if it's reasonable, like 4% or in that 4 to 6% range, that will still be good. Like even the 3 to 6% range would be good. But anything that's below 2% or negative growth would actually be quite negative, and we could see markets go into a risk-off mode with that announcement. So that's one thing we'll have to keep an eye out for. And then another one is China. We haven't really seen Chinese response to President Trump at this point. So we'll have to see what sort of response they come up with now that the Congress in session. They are going to, of course, discuss this. So we'll see what comes out with that. If the response is mild, then we wouldn't really expect any terms of risk-off environment in the markets. However, if they come up with a strong response, now that will be negative for the equity markets, for the stock markets. So we'll see a risk-off environment as a result of that, which will of course have an impact on our currency markets as well. So that's something to pay attention to overall. As well, we have seen that US and Australia relationship has been deteriorating as well. Australia has been calling for investigation into the whole coronavirus issue, and China is not very happy about that. They have threatened Australia with tariffs and such. They did go after the agricultural products, but agriculture is only 2% of the exports from Australia to China. But just today, I saw that Chinese have asked some of the state-owned companies to not purchase coal from Australia, instead to purchase domestic coal. Now that is going to make a difference because coal is one of the big exports of Australia. And so before they were just targeting barley and meat products and stuff like that, but now that they are going into into Australian major exports, that is going to make a difference. So we'll have to just wait and see how this situation sort of goes. If it escalates again, that would be bad for the stock market, and we could go back into selling or the risk-off environment. So those are some of the things we'll have to keep in mind. And of course, that happens tonight. Another thing we'll have coming up tonight is monetary policy statement from Bank of Japan. This was unscheduled meeting. They just announced it a couple days ago. So at this point, we are expecting Bank of Japan to provide additional stimulus package, and that will also include loans to small to medium-sized businesses. So if that's where they leave it, that would be okay. Now, should they start talking about even decreasing the already negative interest rates that they have, or providing a larger size package, or if they start talking about negative growth in the country, all of those would be considered negative, and we could see Japanese yen drop as a result of that. Coming up on Friday here, we have ECB monetary policy meeting minutes. So we have Bank of Japan, and we have ECB monetary policy meeting accounts. So here, this is kind of like the FOMC meeting minutes. So we just need to see what ECB has been talking about. Now, a few days ago, we did hear that Germany and France were proposing a 500 billion euros package that would be good for the European economy. Now, it has to be accepted by the different countries in the Eurozone, but overall, it sounded good. So if that's the type of thing that they're talking about in the ECB meeting, well, that would be good. Other than that, we'll just have to wait and see. It will just be based on the commentary and their outlook in terms of the economy. And then we have retail sales numbers here for pound. Now, the numbers are expected to, of course, be low because the economy was shut down. So this number, at this point, negative news is not having as much of an impact. So if the numbers comes in better than expected, so even with the economy being shut down, if it's not as bad, that will be positive for British pound. So we'll keep that in mind. And then, of course, we have retail sales numbers here for Canada as well. But all in all, we just have news in the morning and then nothing else in the afternoon. So that's it in terms of news. Let's move on to our charts now. As usual, we'll start off by taking a look at our euro. So euro went up slightly right into or almost into the next resistance level here, but it wasn't really able to hold above the 110 level, and then we did see a drop. So today, my outlook is more neutral to bearish on this. We don't really have a bearish engulfing candle yet, so it's not completely bearish at this point. We'll just have to wait and see what happens in the stock markets. If we go back into the risk off mode, this one's likely to drop, or if the ECB meeting minutes come in with more of a negative tone, then we'll expect euro to drop. But if the ECB meeting minutes are more positive, then this one could go back up as well. So it could do one of these. So we have to be careful with that. For now, what I am looking for is one of these. So I'm looking for a bit of a pullback into 1.0965 level. Or even potentially into 1.0980 level, and then a drop into the support here at 1.0920. And this is where we'll have to see if it can hold. If it does hold, then it can go back and start trading in this range. Now, we are going into Friday, and sometimes Fridays tend to be reversal days. So again, we'll have to really just keep an eye on the stock market and see what the stock market is doing. So if the stock market drops, I would expect euro dollar to drop as well. So we'll just keep that in mind. But for now, target here is 109.20, and only if it drops through that, I'm looking at 108.90 level. So for now, neutral to slightly bearish for euro dollar. Pound dollar here, this one we have been hearing a lot about negative interest rates, and I actually expected more of a drop here yesterday than what we got. Part of the move back up here was a result of the positive PMI numbers that came in today. So PMI numbers are a leading indicator, and with the economies opening up and PMIs showing up really well, this is positive, and this is where we saw that it didn't really drop as much. So in this case, bias is still to the downside. I would just be careful here. And in this case, the first target is 1.2160. And then only if it goes through that, next one is 1.2080. So still a bearish bias with pound dollar. I would just be a little bit cautious here. Aussie dollar here, this one has dropped as well, but it is still holding above the support level. So the The candle close that we have for today is not completely bearish. There is bearishness in it, but it's not a bearish engulfing candle or any sort of a strong bearish candle, which means we have to be careful with this. And if you take a look at the 1 hour here, we see that price has just been trading in this range for the last couple of days. At this point, we do need to see the price break through the support level in order for it to continue lower. So at this point, bias is neutral for this. If you were to see, so we may get a bit of a pullback, so watch out for that. And we could see a pullback back into 0.6580 level, and then a potential drop here. So if the stock markets take off to the upside, Aussie dollar is likely to go up as well, because Australian dollar is very much tied into the risk assets. So if risk assets go up, Australian dollar goes up as well. But if they don't, now this is what it looks like. It's been holding below the high, hasn't passed the high though, so we may see a drop. So my bias is more neutral here. And in this case, I will look for a pullback into 0.6580 and then looking for a drop here. First target would be 0.6520. And then only if it goes through that, I will look for 0.6470, but neutral bias for Aussie dollar. New Zealand dollar, same thing here. We see that price went into the very top of this range that it's been trading in so far. So this is the range. It went right into the high, hasn't been able to break the high yet, but we don't have a strong bearish candle close like that. We have a very, very small candle close. That does not really give us any kind of a confidence when it comes to the ability of New Zealand dollar to actually drop yet. So at this point, neutral bias for this one as well. Again, same thing. If the stock market goes up, this is likely to go up as well. But if it drops, so again, we'll have to wait to see what developments happen overnight for us to gauge what reaction stock market will have at this point. So right now, I would look for a bit of a pullback into 0.6135 and then a drop into 0.6065. So a bit of a neutral bias here, but if it doesn't break today's low, it can turn around and go back up again. So neutral bias for New Zealand dollar as well. Dollar CAD here, this one again is trading in a range for the last 3 days. Price went into the support level, hasn't been able to break through. But again, this is, it hasn't closed above the resistance level. So I would be careful with this one as well. So in this case, for this one to continue higher, I would look for a bit of a pullback into 1.3920. If it holds above, then I'm looking for price to break through the high, and only then would I look for next target, which would be 1.4020. So right now, this one bias is neutral as well. It's trading in a range currently, and we need to see which direction it wants to break out. So if it doesn't break through the high, chances are it will come down into the middle here. And if it passes through the middle, we're looking for a move to the downside. And if the risk on mode comes back again, then this one could drop. But for now, neutral bias for dollar CAD as well. All right, so let's take a look at our commodities here, starting off with silver. Silver did drop today. We saw that price was not able to make through the resistance, and now we have a drop here, nice bearish engulfing candle close here. So in this case, bias is bearish. As long as price holds below this 17.15-ish level or 17.20, I would look for a drop. First target would be 16.80. And then should it drop further, we are looking at 16.65. So bearish bias here for silver. Gold as well, we see that price got stuck below the resistance level here. We have a nice bearish engulfing candle close here. So looking for a further drop, a potential pullback into 1730-ish area. And then I would look for a drop towards 1710. So bias is bearish here for gold as well. Oil there. Oil, It's kind of neutral. We did see a further move to the upside, but there is a wick on the top here, very, very small candle close. So neutral to slightly bearish bias here. As long as price stays below the high, essentially, from the day here, I'm looking for a drop. So something like this. And in terms of our target here, first target is 32.20 and then 31.20. So neutral to bearish for oil. Copper here, copper is looking bearish as well. We don't have a bearish engulfing candle yet, but it hasn't been able to make through the resistance level. So bias is slightly bearish. I will look for a potential pullback into 2.40 and then looking for a drop here. 2.35 is our target here. Bitcoin here, Bitcoin finally dropped. Now bias is bearish here. We could get a pullback into 91.80 and then a further drop. In this case, the first target is 87.60 and then 85.20 will be the second target. So bias is bearish for Bitcoin here. S&P 500, market didn't really move a whole lot. As we can see, price wasn't able to break the high in the last 3 days here. And we do have a bearish candle close, but it's not a very strong bearish candle. So in this case, bias is still neutral because this one could still go higher. We are making higher lows. For now, though, I'm looking for a pullback potentially into 2970-ish level, and then if it holds below, I will look for a drop. First target would be the low of today, which is low from yesterday, which is 29.20, and then the second target here would be 28.80. So neutral to slightly a bearish bias here for S&P 500. So there are multiple factors that we need to watch for here. We have Bank of Japan, we have ECB, we have some data coming up, and most importantly here, we have China. So all those factors could move the market in any direction. So we just need to be careful. So neutral to slightly bearish bias here for S&P 500. Nasdaq here, same thing. We don't quite have a bearish engulfing candle yet, so the bias is not completely to the downside yet. But we have found that many times if price has been going up, stock market's been going up during the week, we tend to see a drop on Friday. So it is not written in stone, but keep that in mind. In this case, I'm looking for a pullback potentially into 94.20, and if it holds below, then I will look for a drop. Target is 9,200. So slightly bearish bias here for Nasdaq as well. Dow Jones here, as we can see, price hasn't quite made it through the high. And this one has been trading in this sideways range. So today's candle close very, very small. It's just neutral. And I would look for a bit of a pullback potentially into 24,600, and if it stays below that level, we're looking for a drop. Otherwise, it could just go test the high once again. So this is basically what I'm looking for, a move back towards the bottom of the range after retest of 24,600, and target here is 24,150. And then we have DAX here. DAX is not quite done whole lot either. This one's been trading in a range here as well. With this one, we may get a pullback into 11,150 and then a drop from there. So something like this. Target here is 10,900. So neutral to slightly bearish bias here for DAX as well. FTSE here, we do have a bearish pin bar here. In this case, we may again get a pullback potentially into 6,065-ish level. And then I will look for a drop. This one also kind of went sideways today, didn't really do a whole lot. So most of the stock markets are just, or indices are just waiting here. Target here is 59.20. And then Nikkei here, same thing. We see that price has been kind of been stuck around this 20,720-ish level. Now, we may get a bit of a pullback here towards 20,620. And if it stays below that, we may see a drop here. Again, the bearish candle is not quite as strong here. So it's more sideways than anything else. First target is 20,340, and only if it goes through that would I look for 20,000. So for now, neutral to slightly bearish bias here. So that's it for today. Have a wonderful trading day tomorrow and a wonderful weekend. And I'll be back on Sunday with the weekly analysis. Bye for now.